So, halfway through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I've noticed a pattern. It feels like the main characters that are supposed to help Cloud often act in ways that betray their personalities, with the end goal being to keep Cloud in his delusions and progress the story to its current path. It's almost as if their treatment of Cloud helps Sephiroth, despite it obviously not being the intention, which is highly illogical, since the tonic of Cloud's mental illness is blaring like an ambulance siren throughout every point of the game. Now, this is quite an insane take, which led me into a rabbit hole of writing, retracing steps, peer review, and sinking hundreds of hours into Rebirth, Remake, and Crisis Core respectively, because I was certain that this hypothesis was a gross mischaracterization of the story. Yet, by the end of my hard mode playthrough, I found myself defeated, since my original hypothesis was only strengthened. And even now, I doubt the notions that have led me here, and have constantly second-guessed my thinking at every stage of this essay. Which leads me to creating this video in hopes of getting my thoughts out there, and adding a unique perspective to the general discussion of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. All I ask is that you're open to what I say, and nothing more. A deus ex machina is a person or thing that appears or is introduced into a situation suddenly and unexpectedly, and provides an artificial or contrived solution to an apparently insoluble difficulty. This term is originally derived from ancient Greek and Roman dramas, in which a crane is used to introduce a god into the scene, ultimately deciding the course of the story. However, this literary device is present in many works, the most famous among them being the Odyssey, and Final Fantasy VII is no stranger to this. Due to this connection, I find it fruitful to compare these works and contrast their differences, in hopes that my thesis becomes clear. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is set after the events of Remake, in which we defeat the Arbiter of Fate,
Looks a lot more like an arbiter of fate than the others.
unshackling the world from a supposed locked timeline.
What the hell did I just see?
A glimpse of tomorrow if we fail here today.
The implications are unclear at first, and as the heroes progress through Rebirth, I couldn't help but notice an underlying helplessness from the predicament our heroes are in. Given specific hints sprinkled throughout the game, the player can quickly determine that the stage was set with characters going down a premeditated path, oblivious to how their actions contribute to their folly. The premeditation obviously coming from Sephiroth and or Genova, depending on your interpretation, passively ushering Cloud into a direction that benefits their goals. An example of this being the ending of Remake. The supposed confluence of worlds Sephiroth sought is only possible if the multiple outcomes, or fates, can exist parallel to each other, based purely off the determination of any individual, a trait that was gained after the Arbiter of Fate was bested, since he alone had the sole authority to decide the outcome of an individual's life.
Will be changing more than fate itself. If we succeed, if we win, we'll be changing ourselves.
Rebirth only compounds on this, with the multiple comparisons of Cloud to robed men.
As you can see, your brothers down there are having a little get-together.
Subtly hinting of their connection to Sephiroth, and the entities literally helping our heroes move along this premeditated path.
Huh. Almost like they swung by Cosmo Canyon just so they could lead us here.
Given these examples, the futility of the hero's predicament stems from these angles: the lack of any other direction to Sephiroth, and their obliviousness, never pondering deeply on how their actions have and will negatively affect the world around them.
How can you
To emphasize this point, let me ask you a question. Where is the black materia safer? In the hands of fugitives, wanted for their acts of terrorism, and constantly under surveillance? Or in a temple at an unknown location, whose layout is only decipherable by a race of people that have long gone extinct?
Let those who seek our star's demise find herein their rest. If the black materia is removed, the whole place comes down.
And once they got the materia, what then? What plan did they have to keep it from the prying hands of Shinra? But this satisfies the definition of a contrived situation of unsolvable difficulty, since our heroes' hands are tied, bound by their love of the planet, anger, and determination to end Sephiroth. And with this in mind, one could look to the doomed scenario of Odysseus, windswept and trapped by the titaness Calypso, the daughter of Atlas, with the hopes of him being her husband. Before the god's intervention, Zeus, upon reflecting on the death of Aegisthus and Orestes, retorts, "Ah, how shameless, the way these mortals blame the gods. From us alone, they say, come all their miseries, yes, but they themselves, with their own reckless ways, compound their pains beyond their proper share."
The hell? The reunion.
However, despite the doomed appearance of our hero's plight, there's more than meets the eye. Over the course of Rebirth, the game slowly reveals the true key to the planet's salvation, Cloud Strife. To be exact, the mental degradation of Cloud Strife.
Naturally formed materia. And look at the size of it. Astounding. For the Mako energy to condense into something like this, it must have taken an eternity.
The key in which Sephiroth nurtures, primed, and whose ripening he patiently awaits. But if this supposed fruit is harvested by the right person or people, then maybe crisis can be averted. Luckily for our protagonists, there's many hints to this key littered throughout the story. Our first piece of evidence confirming this idea is the fact that Cloud and the robed men act similarly in certain circumstances.
Hey! Cloud!
Secondly, the heroes are either hinted at or blatantly shown the origin of these robed individuals being the remnants of the soldier program, or experiments from the same regime.
I ask because I suspect they're soldiers suffering from cellular degradation.
Finally, and most importantly, we are given absolute, undeniable proof that these characters are either vessels of Sephiroth or have some affinity to evil. The best example of this being Rufus plainly telling Aerith, Tifa, and Cloud of the robed men's extended nature to Sephiroth.
You know who they are, don't you?
According to Hojo, they're connected to Sephiroth. Shadows of the Man, I believe he called them.
And in the subsequent chapter, where robed men turn into a Genova emergent. An important thing to note is the lack of clarity required for the characters to reach this conclusion. Our heroes don't need to know that Sephiroth himself is controlling Cloud to understand that Cloud is struggling with a problem tied to the current happenings of the world. The fact that Cloud is the only person in the group to sense Sephiroth should have been the most obvious hint to our heroes.
Can't let him have it either.
Him?
Sephiroth. Did no one else sense him?
No.
And this is why his compromised sense of self, hallucinations, and destructive out-of-character choices only strengthen this point. In short, Without using hindsight and framing our perspective towards the minds of our protagonists, we can accurately deduce that Cloud has a major negative connection on the outcome of Rebirth, since he is the key to the puzzle, and solving that will save the world from its impending doom. This unforeseen and unexpected solution can be likened as the Deus of Rebirth, an affinity similar to Athena's role in the Odyssey. From strong emotions of sympathy, Athena descended from the high peaks, with her eyes set for Ithaca, disguising herself as Mentes, son of Anchialus, lord of the Taphians, with hopes of empowering Telemachus with the knowledge required to help his ill-fated father. During their meeting, the goddess of wisdom explains her true purpose, saying, "Yet I tell you, great Odysseus is not dead. He's still alive, somewhere in this wide world, held captive out at sea, on a wave-washed island, and hard men, savages, somehow hold him back against his will."
Focus on you, Cloud. The one I've been trying to find. The real you.
Despite the doomed scenarios of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the Odyssey, the Deus of these literary works provide the hope required to change our hero's destiny. Without Athena empowering Telemachus and appealing to Zeus, the war-hardened Odysseus would remain bound in Ogygia, forever chained to the whims of Calypso. And in the same breath, one could easily liken the plight of Odysseus to Cloud, whose cage of hallucinations, anger, and warped memories
Perhaps you'd like to say a few words to your sword first?
bloom from the designs of Sephiroth. Yes, given the context of OG FF7, Cloud regains control of his mind. But one could argue that the time span in which this happens could be greatly reduced in Rebirth had his friends identified this obstacle and addressed it sooner. In fact, this evidence, or Deus, acts like Athena, who constantly mourned the fate of Odysseus. To Zeus, Athena laments, "But my heart breaks for Odysseus, that seasoned veteran, cursed by fate so long, far from his loved ones still, he suffers torments, off on a wave-washed island, rising at the center of the seas."
Whatever happens, don't blame yourself.
Given the solution, one would hope that our heroes would realize this conclusion sooner rather than later, like Telemachus and Calypso's heedance to the decrees of the divine. However, after completing the game, I'm left with the opinion that our heroes act out of congruency to their true personalities whenever Cloud does something out of the ordinary, like his mental illness and maiming of minor characters, with the exception being individuals or events that take precedence to the main storyline. To demonstrate my point, let me prime you for the evidence shown later. At the beginning of Rebirth, we understand that Tifa, Barrett, and even Nanaki have some compassion for the plight of the robed men. In Chapter 3, Barrett and Nanaki split from the group to save the fallen robed men.
Know what? I'll go check.
Okay, I'll come too.
Nah, you stay. I know what I'm doing down here. You don't. Last thing we need is you getting hurt on us.
I'll accompany him. I'm no stranger to caves.
In Chapter 4, Barrett and Tifa feel bad for the robed men being abducted.
Oh my god.
He ain't coming back.
And in Chapter 5, Barrett protects the robed men from dying.
Oh, hey! Been busting my ass trying to keep these guys alive.
You get the point. With the exception of Yuffie and possibly Vincent, no one in the group has a desire to murder. despite their consciences weighing heavily on acting justly. This is further proven by Barrett in Remake. When faced with the opportunity to kill President Shinra, the source of all destruction in Sector 7, Barrett ultimately relents to his merciful nature.
I'm a man of modest dreams. Dropping you from 70 stories up would get me damn near to good.
But not all the way. You want something more, don't you?
More than this right here? Talk to me again like you know me.
Barrett! Stop it!
So, it's hard to believe that, given Cloud's psychological issues, no one found it reasonable to stop him from casually murdering people for no reason. Cloud kills robed men, and even a Shinra soldier begging for mercy in front of his friends, and no one was brave enough to question his actions. Is it really in the personality of Barrett, the leader of a fringe extremist movement for the planet, to watch someone kill the same people he defended a few chapters prior, and all while staying silent? The only time our heroes stop Cloud is when his sword is raised at a character that is needed later in the story, which is almost an insult to the unnamed humans slain for what purpose exactly? These inconsistencies expand even further, specifically in the way our heroes handle Cloud's mental issues. In fact, our heroes recognize Cloud's behavior, but do little to stop him, beyond light reprimanding.
Hey, you've been acting pretty weird lately, Cloud. Rest up and shake it off. You hear me?
Despite the illness endangering himself and others. The most egregious example being Cloud falling off a Mako bridge, and our hero's reaction.
Perhaps the Mako got to him. Regardless, he's clearly tired.
Cloud could rest here while a couple of us go and lower the bridge, yeah?
No one questions the fact that Cloud almost jumped off a cliff and actually take it quite lightheartedly. The way the scene plays out leaves an eerie feeling, since the player should, naturally, question the grip Cloud has on reality if he unknowingly attempted suicide. But the characters that literally watched him make the final step don't think the same. This unsettling fog looms throughout the game, with characters making offhanded remarks about Cloud's fever states.
Don't scare me like that. Thought Cloud might have lost it again.
Yet doing little to address it. It's almost as if no one takes Cloud, or the mission at hand, seriously, since the next logical step should be a consideration of Cloud's role in the group, not letting him into a room with the materia that could ensure the destruction of the world. Finally, the heroes even go as far as feeding into Cloud's delusions, shackling him and themselves from realizing the truth of Cloud's situation. I could bring up Cloud's memories of Crisis Core events, but I think that Aerith and Tifa's choice of shielding him is defendable to some perspectives. However, the girls outright denying the possibility of Cloud's cellular degradation?
Degradation. It's hollowing me out, bit by bit.
You're wrong.
Is not, since they have no evidence arguing for Cloud's immunity. All the evidence I provided in this essay was tailored specifically to events in which multiple people were present to negate the possibility of Cloud's unreliable narration. The fact of the matter is, Aerith and Tifa were given numerous clues hinting that Cloud could be suffering from a form of degradation, with the most obvious being Cloud's final fight with Roche and his transformation into a robed husk. The entire group literally witnesses this. The confirmation of the robed man's origin, and the ultimate effects of cellular degradation.
There's no escaping the degradation. My friend.
There's no other conclusion to make besides what's given. And shielding Cloud from this truth,
There's no escaping the degradation.
That won't happen to you. Don't worry.
Yeah, she's right. You're gonna be just fine.
at this point of the story, only works to the detriment of everyone involved. These incongruencies only leave a foul miasma in the air, one that questions the motives of our heroes and their understanding of the dire nature of this predicament. This is where Final Fantasy VII Rebirth diverges from the Odyssey, since Telemachus and Calypso heed the counsel of the gods. The will of Telemachus was a dormant seed, buried under soils of pain, sadness, and defeat, yet violently awakened by, in the words of Homer, Glaucopis Thea, the grey-eyed goddess. And Calypso, despite her protests, understood the futility in raising arms against the patriarch of Olympus. Yet, I can't help but find similarities of characters in FF7 Rebirth to Telemachus' mother, who is grief-stricken by their current lot in life, her helplessness, and the unknown fate of Odysseus. From this sadness, she lashes out at a mere bard, and in this excerpt, Telemachus corrects her, saying, "Why deny our devoted bard the chance to entertain us any way the spirit stirs him on? Bards are not to blame. Zeus is to blame. He deals to each and every laborer on this earth whatever doom he pleases. Why fault the bard if he sings the Argives' harsh fate? It's always the latest song, the one that echoes in the listener's ears, that people praise the most. Courage, mother. Harden your heart and listen. Odysseus was scarcely the only one, you know, whose journey was blotted out at Troy. Others, so many others, died there too.
My friend, your desire is the bringer of life, the gift of the goddess.
Whether your words are lies created to deceive me, or the truth that I have sought all my life, it makes no difference. You will rot.
I see. Perfect monster indeed.
To further illustrate my point, I call upon a scene that demonstrates every dissenting opinion I have, being the breakaway from salvation and logic, all in one sequence, the Gongaga incident, I like to call it. Starting from the point in Chapter 9, in which Sephiroth gains a level of control over Cloud. When Tifa arrives to the Mako reactor, she's given a glimpse of the change in Cloud, his disheveled appearance, blood-kissed blade, and eyes yearning for more, all contradictory in Tifa's perception of who her lifelong friend is. Tifa tries to soothe and break whatever haze has come over her friend, only to find that the same boy who made a promise to protect her has now lifted the sword against her, babbling incoherent nonsense and denying the validity of her existence. In, arguably, one of the most traumatic sequences in current FF7,
But I'm no fool.
Cloud breaks from all reasoning and swings at Tifa with an intent to kill, pushing her from the ledge and into a bowl of Mako. Now, I want you to think how distressed and confused one might feel while floating in the live stream, forced in an insane predicament from an act of betrayal.
Cloud, please. I need you.
Put yourself in Tifa's shoes. How would you feel? Obviously, Cloud has no desire of hurting her, but like any catalyst, the ending reaction is not changed, despite one's intention. The fact of the matter is, Cloud did betray her, and nonsensically believed Sephiroth and his delusions over the truth.
Cloud, don't let her fool you. She has no scar.
You have no scar.
She's not
You're
Tifa.
not Tifa. You can't be.
This is the true Deus of the game. Not blaming Cloud for his actions, but understanding that he truly has no firm grip on the delusions haunting him, despite the hallucinations having disastrous and dangerous effects on him, his loved ones, and the world around him. Like Odysseus, Cloud is mentally trapped in a forest, on an island far away, by a figure with intent to break his will and condition him to their own devices. This is a conclusion any logical person can come to, given the evidence of Cloud's actions prior. Yet the game tries to pull Tifa, and our minds alike, away from logic, and uses the Mako livestream sequence to deny the futility of Cloud's predicament, despite the overwhelming betrayal, evidence against the efficacy of this belief, and the sad truth that this mindset will prove to be fatal later in Rebirth.
Your words can't reach him now.
Don't take him too!
Again, I need to emphasize that this logic is based on the viewpoint of our heroes in the present, not a hindsight approach that understands the ending of OG Final Fantasy VII. This clearly shows that no individual character is a problem, but the writing of the machine that is bending the story into a specific outcome, even at the cost of the integrity of our heroes. There is no way someone could justify Tifa trusting Cloud to the point of being vulnerable with him when she wakes up afterwards. None. Who would want to vent to their possible killer? Especially if they're your childhood friend who betrayed you for the sake of appeasing their delusions. Why would she even think that talking to him would work when it clearly has not in the past? For example, at the start of the game, Cloud was so deep in his delusions that he wouldn't answer a critical question regarding his whereabouts, hurting Tifa so much that she teared up.
And where were you again? In fact, where have you been this whole time? For 5 years.
You know I can't tell you that.
Of course you can't. Sorry, I just need some space.
And clearly, referencing the events that take place afterwards, her conversation with Cloud at this point didn't really change a thing. Now, cycling back to the main argument. Why, in the only breakthrough moment of Cloud's development in Rebirth? Would you defer to his delusions instead of challenging Cloud to accept the reality of the situation?
Soldier cells degrade. I think that's what's happening to me. That I'm falling apart.
That's not going to happen to you.
And finally, in a bigger question, why did Tifa stay silent about the event? After their interaction, Tifa chooses to not tell the group the truth of what Cloud has done and hides it from them. And I can almost guarantee this as a fact, since Aerith did the same in chapter 14, and it's heavily implied that she covered for him by telling the group a different story of how Sephiroth got the black materia.
So, Cloud, I heard something from Aerith. She said Sephiroth kicked the ever-living crap out of you back in the Temple of the Ancients.
You heard wrong. Didn't go down like that.
Okay. Then how exactly did he get the materia from you?
So why did Tifa choose to stay silent? Obviously, it's to maintain the integrity and stability of the group. But I challenge this claim with another question. If Cloud is clearly not able to restrain himself from self-harming or harming his loved ones, isn't it your responsibility to vocalize this revelation for the sake of protecting the people around you? At this point, Cloud is clearly a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode and resistant to being dismantled.
You can trust me. Let's save the planet together. Aerith!
The only way to prevent unnecessary casualties is by metaphorically evacuating. So why didn't Tifa, or anyone, set that line of logic into motion? Why did no one ever address this line of thinking, since it's based purely off the information given in the story? I think, on a surface level, it's highly irresponsible as a friend to not properly address the actions of someone you supposedly care about, especially if it's a danger to themselves or the people around them. But from a broader view, it's even more irresponsible to leave these questions unanswered and reward the viewer for not critically thinking with fan service. Cloud has killed others, almost killed himself, and one of the people he cares about. Yet the game takes none of this seriously and only gives him a slap on the wrist or face. And honestly, it's hard to engage with the story when characters are designed to act irrationally, and these actions only leave our heroes compromised, exposing themselves to the danger of Cloud's mental fragility and its underlying consequences. This sequence reminds me of a scene in the Odyssey in which Athena urges Telemachus to return home, warning him of the suitors who plan to pillage his wealth. She states, "It's wrong, Telemachus. Wrong to rove so far, so long from home, leaving your own holdings unprotected. Crowds in your palace, so brazen, they'll carve up all your wealth, devour it all, and then your journey here will come to nothing." With the narrative of this essay established, it should be clear why climactic moments didn't elicit the desired reaction from me. This line of logic was never fully addressed, and only opened bigger questions that challenged the fabric of the storylines. The answer to these said questions lead back to the thesis of this essay, being that the major characters surrounding Cloud in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are artificially contorted in order to progress the story in a certain direction, despite defying all logic and pre-context that should sufficiently predict the character's future actions. It's as if the crane holding the Deus of the drama is visible, thrashing and distorting itself in a way that averts the audience's gaze away from the play and onto its crooked likeness. Now, I'm fully aware that the primary dissenting argument will stem somewhere in the world of FF7 Rebirth is based off of the OG, and everything will make sense once the trilogy is finished. However, given the price, length, and quality, I'm of the firm belief that a game's story should hold up on its own without any pre-context beyond the lore preceding it. A $70 game should have a story unique to itself while gearing up for the next installment, with said story leaving the protagonists and players changed individuals. And can you honestly say that any character in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has changed after this 60-hour escapade? Specifically, in a purposeful sense that alludes to the ultimate climax of Final Fantasy VII? Even the main character, Cloud Strife, is still struggling with the same context of reality from Remake, an ailment brought forth by a villain whose machinations are clear, yet hidden enough to fool our protagonists. And honestly, shouldn't these problems be non-existent if the game is following a pre-contrived story with pre-written plot points? In closing, there are many moments that won my heart in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and my hunger for the last installment is ravenous like any other fan of 7. Yet, I wonder, given the intricacies discussed, how the final game will play out beyond the obvious. The goal of this essay is to recontextualize the game, in my view, in a way that makes you think critically about the content given to you. It's important for us as consumers to be critical of the products we buy for the sake of making them better. It starts by having dialogue with opinions free of bias that clash with one another and a new, fresh, and inspiring perspective birthed as a result. If you feel like I'm wrong, or you'd like to add more to the narrative that I discussed, feel free to leave a comment below. But with that being said, thank you so much for reaching to the end of the video, and thank you so much for listening to what I had to say. And I hope you got something out of it. See you later.
I'm here if you want to talk.
Well, actually, I was kind of hoping we could talk business.